This is my idea of a spaceship. All gleaming metal, flashing lights, everything.
Rocket Summer has begun, and I love Rocket Summer. This is an event created by Michael K. Vaughan, celebrating vintage science fiction, going from the early years of science fiction through the 30s in the first week, and then into the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, and celebrating what's so awesome about science fiction. And actually, the first two things I'm going to talk about in this kind of vlog style situation really do sum up some of that excitement, that adventure, that imaginative, creative, blank slate that they had in the early days of science fiction. So what I've done is I've started with War of the Worlds, a reread of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. I'm a huge H.G. Wells fan. H.G. Wells was an amazing man. He had a fantastic brain that was so iconic in some of the things he created. And this is obviously a legendary book. I read it as a kid, so I read it ages ago. So it was really nice to read it again. And I really, really enjoyed it. And there's so many ways it's influenced lots of different things. It's like when I did that book review of Princess of Mars a few years ago. The influence is huge. You can see it on the page. You can see the influence here. That sort of, this is like the first kind of invasion story. It was written between 1895 and 1897. It was kind of serialized first, and then it was put into a novel after that. And that you can see, that early, you've got this trope, if that's the right way of saying it, this sort of plot line, the aesthetics that are in there, the things that the characters go through, and the tone of the book becomes something that gets referenced or copied or paraphrased for decades and decades afterwards. One of the things that I thought was interesting as well when I looked some of this stuff up, it's actually heavily influenced itself by an invasion story that came out in the 1860s, where Germany invades Britain, which is kind of mad. And Germany was just becoming Germany as well in the 1860s and 1870s. So that's kind of interesting as well. So as soon as Germany unites and becomes a unified country, then people start panicking, apparently, in literature. But that was a big influence on this. But I mean, that wasn't because H.G. Wells was a xenophobe or anything. I mean, he was a really sound man. He was a socialist, and he was very suspicious of imperialism and some of the sort of colonialist activities and stuff. So some people have thought that this book was a comment on that. But anyway, read it if you haven't read it, because it's a great book. It's definitely more of an adventure story than an allegory. I don't think it's that obvious what it's allegorical about. So it's definitely an adventure story. And there's a few things I really enjoyed. I loved where it was set. So it was set around Sussex, areas of Surrey and London, mostly. There were some references to other places, including Portsmouth. So Portsmouth was mentioned a few times, and that's obviously where I live, where I was born and raised, and I've only ever lived in Portsmouth. So that was really nice to read that. But it was just really interesting, the fact that I knew exactly where they were going, because I know the area so well, because it's just like, my neighbour, I live in Hampshire, and these other counties are right next to Hampshire. So I could see what they were doing, which was really cool. And the sense of where in the areas where the Martians hadn't attacked yet, the media didn't know what was going on, and they were given this false impression of what was happening, and the people only had the media to go on. And that was a really interesting aspect of it. And then the main character would get there, and he'd go, no, that's not what's been happening. This has been what's happening, and describing it again. The design of the Martians and the ships are so fantastic, so iconic, and that was great. and just so many things about it were great. So yeah, Waterworlds, really enjoyed it. Oh, and I kind of buddy read it, even though it was a bit loose. We didn't decide to buddy read it, but I read it at the same time as Pat from Book Chat with Pat, and we were talking about it while we were reading it, which was really nice. So it was a kind of a buddy read, like an accidental buddy read. So that was really good, and thoroughly recommend this. So you clearly heard about it. If you hadn't heard about the book itself, you may have seen the films. There's been lots of adaptations of it, and you may know Jeff Wayne's extremely famous and popular musical from the 70s, which is great, with Richard Burton doing the narration and all that stuff. You know, when I read the line, "The chances of anything coming from Mars are 1,000,000 to 1," my brain sang it. It doesn't read it, it sang it. But still they come. Yeah, so awesome. H.G. Wells, what a man. So after that, I thought it'd be really nice to read this, and I did a video on this after I read it, and you've probably seen that video already, because I wanted to bring it up at the early part of the month as a nice little introduction to Rocket Summer. This is a book all about classic SF vintage cover book art, and what I love about this is what our brains tell us is what science fiction looks like. This is what rocket ships look like. This is what aliens look like, what robots look like, because these covers were so important at the time to give over those things. And, you know, the old black and white science fiction films copied the designs on these things as well. And, you know, it became a huge part of the science fiction aesthetic. So yeah, this was great to read. This is a brilliant book, and that was a really important element to this year's Rocket Summer for me. So there we are, Ray Guns and Rocket Ships, vintage science fiction book cover art by Ryan Hughes. So that was the second thing that I read for Rocket Summer. I'm now, my next plan is to read some of those short stories that I was going to read with Pat. We've picked out some stories out of the Wesleyan science fiction anthology, so that's going to be awesome. And then I'll pick my next longer book as I'm going along. But yeah, comment below about those things first. Thank you very much. So the next part of Rocket Summer for me for 2025 was two stories from the Wesleyan Anthology of Science Fiction that I'm picking stories from with Pat from Book Chat with Pat. And the first two are from 1931. And I really enjoyed both of them. So the first one was, where are we? First one, Edmund Hamilton. Edmund Hamilton, and it's called The Man Who Evolved. The Man Who Evolved. And it's a man who invites two of his friends to his house to help him continue his experiments on evolution. And it's that sort of thing where it kind of reminded me a little bit of Altered States, the 70s film where they experiment and go through these different stages of evolution in the film. But in this story from 1931, this scientist goes through like millions of years of evolution through this accelerated process, because he's discovered that these particular rays from the sun, I think it is, cause evolution. And it's just really cool the way that it explores what Edmund Hamilton wanted to say our future evolution would be. And you've got this sort of godlike human through the story freaking out these two friends. It's really good. So it's quite short, but I really enjoyed it. And it's got that sort of classic thing that you see in Time Machine, and Dr. Morrow and all those sort of things where there's a scientist inviting friends around to show how clever he is and all that, which is really good. So Edmund Hamilton's The Man Who Evolved was really good. And then we read a story by an author I hadn't heard of before, and the introduction in the book does say that she's a bit of a neglected author, much more important than history has suggested. Leslie F. Stone, and this was a story called The Conquest of Gola. There's a couple of really interesting things. There's another invasion story, but it's an invasion story. Let's try and get this name again. Hold on. The planet they come from is Detaxel. So they keep being referred to by this first person narrator as Detaxelans, but they're Earthlings. So these are Earthmen, but she calls them Detaxelans. And Gola in here is actually Venus. So they're on Venus, and it's a matriarchal society, so led by women, and they pour scorn on men like crazy. And then these men appear from Earth, and they're trying to communicate to them, and they want to effectively occupy them in a friendly way. That doesn't seem to be working, and then they say, well, we're going to take it by force, and then they attack Gola, or Venus. And so you've got this sort of plot happening, but within that you've got this sort of gender swap thing where the matriarchal Venusians are utterly powerful on Venus and aren't expecting anything particularly intelligent or ambitious or respectful or respectable from these visitors from Earth. And yeah, it's quite fun reading all that. And, you know, I don't know if she was possibly getting some revenge on her treatment, because she wasn't treated with a lot of respect as a writer. John W. Campbell said that women shouldn't write science fiction and can't write science fiction. So, you know, it could have been a bit of revenge. But yeah, it was a fun story. I enjoyed that. So 2 stories in 1931 there after War of Worlds. That's how I started. And I realised that this is the ideal time to do my next Ray Bradbury Chronicles video in Rocket Summer. And the Golden Apples of the Sun is the next one on my list. So I don't know if you've been watching those, but I've been doing a Ray Bradbury deep dive and taking Ray Bradbury's books chronologically. So I started with his crime mystery stuff, which is really interesting. So Golden Apples of the Sun, it's one of my favourite Ray Bradbury books. So I'll do a video on that, and then I'll be reading Dandelion Wine as well, probably this month. So if you want to read Dandelion Wine with me, I know I'll be reading it with Dave, but I think someone else said about it, so I don't know if this will come out in time, probably will. Let me know if you want to read that as well. But Golden Apples of the Sun needs a review up on here to be part of my Ray Bradbury videos. So that's coming up soon. Hello everyone. So my next Rocket Summer story is from this fantastic book, The Time Traveler's Almanac. The Ultimate Treasury of Time Travel Short Stories is a huge book. And this was a short story called Vintage Season. And this was a story by C.L. Moore and Henry Kuttner. And it was so good. So a little bit about C.L. Moore and Henry Kuttner. So they always wrote together. They were a couple, husband and wife. And this particular story, Vintage Season, was often credited just to C.L. Moore. And their stories originally appeared in Weird Tales. But in 1946, Vintage Season appeared in Astounding Science Fiction. And it was actually appeared as a pseudonym as well. I think the name was Lawrence O'Donnell or something like that. Yeah, C.L. Moore and Henry Kuttner wrote it, although it's often cited just as C.L. Moore. And it was so good, such a good story. Short story. So, time travel is such an awesome springboard for brilliant stories. And this one was about this couple, Oliver and Sue, who are trying to sell this property, and they'd like to sell it before the end of the month because someone's offered them a lot of money for it. But there's these 3 people that have moved in for a month. They've hired the property for a month, and they are very persistent about staying there for the whole month, even though Oliver and Sue would like to get rid of them before the end of the month because they've got this great offer. So everybody wants to be in this, what it keeps getting described as a ramshackle property that Oliver doesn't understand why it's so important. But he also thinks these visitors are very mysterious. And as it goes along, I won't spoil it, but as it goes along, you get the sense that, knowing it's in this volume as well, they could be time travelers. And they are, and the way that it unfolds is brilliant. And Oliver gets stuck in the middle of it, and it's got some really good ideas in it. And so it's quite different, I'd say, to your average time travel short story. And it was just really good. And the ending is quite, a nice conclusion as well. But it's beautifully written as well. So the prose is excellent, and it's very engaging, and characterization is really comprehensive of the characters that are in it, and you really do get a sense of what's going on really, really clearly. It's a brilliantly written story. So C.L. Moore and Henry Kuttner's Vintage Season from 1946. Hello everybody. So the next stage of Rocket Summer for me is this. To my shame, I still haven't read Brave New World, which is ridiculous. So I've owned it many times, and this is the latest copy I own, which is the vintage copy. So vintage is a really interesting imprint that you can see in a lot of remainder shops as well as just in shops in general. And it's quite a cool imprint of classic works. Often the Penguin classics are often in this sort of imprint as well. But Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, came out in 1932, and it's obviously a seminal, hugely influential work that I know a lot about it already. I feel like I've read it, but I know I haven't, but I feel like I've read it, and I have actually already started it, and I can't wait to properly get stuck in. And this is going to be something I'm going to be reading in between some short stories. So this is in the 30s, early 30s, but I'm going to be reading stuff from later on, some of the 40s stuff, and also doing the Golden Lamps of the Sun video, in which I have read it, but I will need to do some planning for it and make sure it's fine. So yeah, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, that's going to be in my reading now, probably for I don't know, hopefully 4 or 5 days, but we'll see. There we go. So let me know if you read that in the comments. I also thought it'd be fun to watch Flash Gordon from 1940, Buster Crabbe, and this is Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, and episode 1, which is called The Purple Death.
Turn on the death dust. Flash Gordon! You didn't think you'd get away with this, did you, Ming? Roker, disarm them. Throw their guns in that pit. Turan, go ahead.
Innocent times, right? Whew. I think it's going to be all right. Okay, so I read another one from here. So this is another one that me and Pat decided to read together. And this was Thunder and Roses by Theodore Sturgeon. So I don't know yet what Pat thinks of it, but I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a really good story. It's from 1947. And it's quite an unusual take on a post-nuclear situation at an army base, and centered around an entertainment singer that was trying to give a message to the soldiers. And I thought it was really powerful, really sad and melancholic for the whole thing, but just the right tone. And I think Theodore Sturgeon is really good. I've always thought he's really good. I've liked everything I've read by him. But yeah, this was a really effective story, and Definitely recommend it. Thunder and Roses from 1947. Really cool. So, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. Probably one of the best books I'll ever read. Definitely the best book for Rocket Summer, I'm sure. Definitely one of the best books I've read this year. But phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. It's incredibly famous, obviously. There were two massive dystopian moments in fiction in the early half of the 20th century. 1984, George Orwell and this. They're both titans of speculative fiction. And this has got so many brilliant ideas. It's written in a way that's very welcoming as well. So if you compare it to something like Blindness by Jose Saramago, which is also one of my favourite books, that's quite dry in the way it's written, whereas this is a little bit more fun. No, it's not the right word. This is a little bit more of an easier read. Yeah, it's not fun, but it's extremely inventive, there's so many brilliant ideas about this dystopian society that's created through all sorts of different things. So a few kind of big things like the prenatal social engineering, genetic engineering, the statewide social engineering through the whole thing, you know, like just so many different levels of that. The submissive docility that's been created by Soma, the drug that everybody uses, that proliferates through the society. The shocking attitudes to, well, for the time it would have been attitudes to sex and relationships. I think that's really interesting that you put that in there as well to compound the vision of this society. And the deliberate engineering of a caste system of alphas and epsilons that's right from birth, right through. The way that they get treated right through is just brilliantly done as well. So kind of creates a haves and have-nots sort of situation deliberately from birth. So yeah, it couldn't be more recommended. You definitely got to read this. If you haven't read this, I'm sure most people watching this would have read it. But if you haven't read it, don't think that you've already read it because you've heard about it so much, because it's an enjoyable read as well. But yeah, Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. I felt like I'd already read it because I knew so much about it, but it was a really good read, and it's kind of crazy I hadn't read it yet. But I have now, and this is going to be the end of the first part of my Rocket Summer reading. So thank you so much for watching, and let me know below what you've been reading. And Brave New World, what do you think of that? See you for the next one. Stay curious, everybody.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to